You ready?
I was born ready.
Welcome back to the Jaunty Mantis. This is season 3 of a tabletop role-playing game podcast devoted to creative questions for curious gamers. I've got a curious gamer with me right here. His name is Jesse.
And I just want everyone to bang a gong, get it on, get it on.
That's fantastic. I am your other co-host, Matty. I don't know what my beautiful best friend just said, but I'm here for it.
Hey, season 3, we made it
Yeah,
again.
we made it again. Maybe you just got done listening to our bonus episodes. We did one about Star Trek and street etiquette, and we tried to put together the concepts for a survival craft or TTRPG. I'm sure there's something else in there that we probably recorded early days, and then I just decided to get around to it, and we posted it in between seasons. But we're back. We're here. We're at season 3. Jesse, what is season 3 all about?
Oh, were we supposed to have a plan? Shit. No, in
Yeah.
season 3, we are reviewing RPG books.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we have selected a list of RPG books. And if you're listening to this and you want to follow along, here is the order in which we have planned to do season 3. 12 episodes per season. That's how we do things currently at the Jaunty Mantis. And Jesse, we have the following books for our audience.
Book 1, Velvet Generation. Book 2, Index Card RPG. Book 3, Shadow Dark. Book 4, Troika, which I probably should have said like Shadow Dark. Uh, Book 5, Fate Core, because we think it's important to be relevant and with the times. Book 6, Ultraviolet Gas Grasslands. I always want to say ultraviolet every time I try to say the name of this game.
Makes sense.
Book 7, Shadowrun Anarchy. Book 8, Trophy Dark. Book 10, Transformers the Role Playing Game. Book 11, Blades in the Dark. Book 12, Soulbound, The Age of Sigmar.
Yeah. Speaking of relevancy, you may have, may not heard of this book that just came out called Blades in the Dark. It
I
seems to
think
be
it
gaining
might
a lot
make
of
a
steam.
splash. I don't know. I just got this feeling that it might completely consume the story game
Yeah.
side of the hobby
And
for
Jesse,
good reasons.
we had a listener who wrote into the show, and I believe you know them IRL, and they had asked, like, what are some other books, systems that we would recommend? And we did a whole bonus episode about it, and then we lost that episode. I take full responsibility for that. I have no idea where that episode is. So this season I want to dedicate to that listener who I don't remember what their name is, but you know who you are. Thank you for writing in. And I would like this season to kind of be dedicated to that listener. Here are some other books that we were interested in or we already read and we love and we wanted to talk more about. And then I want to cap it off with a bonus episode where we try again.
Well, all I have to say to that is baby's on fire, better throw her in the water.
Okay. I don't know what that means as well.
I'm
Okay.
doing a bit.
Hey, I'm there with you. I'll go there with you, even if I don't understand what we're doing, just as long as it's not racist.
It's not.
Okay, then I'm there with you. Okay, so book one is A Velvet Generation, written by a couple of guys, one of which is Rich Ranallo, friend of the show. It's also written by Scott Layton and
Leaton.
Leaton, sorry. Ah, God damn it. I tried not to fuck it up this time. Anyway, my apologies, Scott. But so we need to preface this conversation by saying Rich is a friend of ours. He's a friend of the show. He's got an open invite to come back on the show. We did our very first official episode talking about this book, and we wanted to go more into it in detail. So recognize that, he's a friend of ours. We could be a bit biased in the way that we read this book, but this is a damn good role-playing game book, in my opinion, and I think it deserves a deeper dive than just an interview with Rich, which we love to have him on the show. And so keep that in mind as we're reviewing this book.
I will say though, to be fair, I will have a bias on this one, but that's because it's a role-playing game book,
Fair enough.
which I have found out I tend to be fondly disposed of.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I can think of like two that I've tried to read and been like, nah,
Mm.
nah,
Hmm.
done. Book of erotic fantasy, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, the Slayer's Guide to Nymphs. Yeah. I think that's the one I couldn't make it through. Um,
I bet that was problematic. I don't think I read that one.
I don't actually know if that exists. I kind of think I just made that up. There
Oh, I'm
was a
sure it
series
does.
called The Slayer's Guide, though, right? It was like a Mongoose 3.0
Yeah,
joint,
Mongoose or Green Ronin or
something like that. Yeah. All right. So I also want to preface that every single one of the books that we are reviewing, we bought with our own real life money. We did not accept any gifts, despite our efforts to try to get free material, which I don't think either one of us tried to do. I don't know,
I didn't
but
try to get free material. I just like, can I give you money for this early? Because I didn't back the Kickstarter because I'm an idiot.
oh, and that was on that, but that was not on Velvet Generation. So
No.
still stands. We didn't ask for anything free. We didn't want anything for free. We wanted to support the people who created these books. So we used our own real life money. And even though Rich is a friend, we spent our own money on this. It wasn't provided. And that goes for every book in this series. All right.
Cool. We
Jesse,
have a
anything else
format.
to add? Format is as follows. Jesse, take us in.
All right. First thing we're going to do, we're going to talk about a brief overview of the book. And then our second segment is called Why It Matters. And then the third is What do you do in this game? Followed by Why is it cool? And then the aha moment.
Hmm.
And then who'd you make?
So, do we want to briefly cover what each one of these means? Like a brief
No.
overview is self-explanatory.
Okay. Why it matters, we talk about like why or if it matters in the state of role-playing games today, or maybe to us personally. Um, and what do you do? We talk about what is what we think the intended play arc is. What do player characters do in this game? Why is it cool is where we talk about anything that's unique or interesting that jumped out at us. The aha moment is where we talk about when it clicked for us or when
Hmm.
you're like, oh, I want to play this game.
Exactly.
Uh, and then who'd you make is just, like what we decided to do with it. Did we try and make a character? What concept did we come up with to tell stories with this game?
Yeah, the Hoojamake is either a character we came up with, or maybe in some of one of the other books, it's like maybe a setting or a first session or, some other detail. It doesn't always have to be a character. It can definitely be something that we made specifically, at least conceptually or on paper, to in service of the game as a whole.
Some of those characters you might be like, what's their name? Virginia Plain.
Okay. You're making me feel stupid right now, but that's okay.
No, you're brilliant. You've got a hubcap diamond star halo.
Fantastic. All right. Brief overview. Jesse, what is the brief overview of Velvet Generation in case they didn't listen to our first official episode?
In the grim darkness of the 2070s, there is only rock and roll revolution.
Hell yeah. There's also aliens.
Yeah, they're helping.
Yeah. So Velvet Generation is a really cool, but the idea is you are a musician or somebody around music. You form a band, you play shows. and it's in the future, and you're doing so essentially illegally, and you have joined a revolution to fight a greater evil, a ministry.
Yes. The In the aftermath of wars and climate change, the earth has been reshaped by the ministries, who are this sort of one world government. It's almost all city. It's bleak, it's drab, it's grim, and there are these the star children who are space aliens who heard glam rock, which is now I can reveal everything I've said that's weird is a line from a famous glam rock song.
There you
So,
go.
um, yes, the aliens heard the music in the 70s and they're like, we have to go meet these people. So they traveled all the way across space. And by the time they showed up, the ministries had taken over. Rock and roll was illegal. So were most forms of cultural expression. And they came down to, and they're kind of, some of them are, a lot of them are joining the revolution through rock and roll to enliven the spirit. And it's based on the DNA of this game. I love it. It's yeah, I a lot of it is the song Starman by David Bowie. A lot of it is the idea of like a rock opera about an oppressive one world government as like seen on an episode of Bob's Burgers. Um, I don't think if you remember the Aerosmith Revolution X video game where an evil one world government kidnapped Aerosmith and you had to
Wow.
rescue them with an Uzi that fired CDs. That I don't think was taken into this. But I think Rich told me a lot of it was inspired by just like this idea about a rock opera about a rock and roll revolution against tyranny and oppression and fascism.
And I would like to say that after reading this book from start to finish, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say they fucking nailed it.
Oh my God, they nailed it. So let's talk about why that matters.
Whoa, okay. Yeah. All right. Why does that matter for you?
Okay, here's why it matters for me. Since certain political events that may have happened over the last 8 years or so, I don't know, for some reason goes back to 2016. Don't know why. I have been very, very interested in the idea of telling stories in my role-playing games about catharsis, uh, punching Nazis, and revolution. Don't know why those have been the things I've been thinking about as someone who really likes, to read about history. Don't know why I'd be concerned with that. But I've seen a number of revolutionary role-playing games where the play arc is a revolution. And they're all, I think, really important. And I think it's good to have people play games where they can explore this idea, but I think a lot of them have maybe in the end been just a little too real. And this captures that revolutionary spirit while I think still remembering it's a game and fun.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so that's why it matters to me. A game that lets you have fun while having a revolution. Not to say the stakes are zero, but like if you look at other ones, like say Brinkwood Blood of Tyrants, where you are like outlaws living in the forest who go into the cities to hunt down vampires who are a direct metaphor for capitalism. Like it's pretty real. I mean, even though it's vampires, it feels like the stakes are very high. It's very grim. There's bodies on the floor. That's tonally possible in Velvet Generation, but not written into the book. You know,
Right.
the ministries are bad, but they don't talk about their interrogation, tortures, and holding cells, you know?
Right. Right. This kind of I'm going to piggyback everything that you said because I completely agree with it. Why it matters to me is many reasons, but the most important is that this is a modern role-playing game in every sense of the word. It is written with a modern sensibility. It incorporates different mechanical aspects, such as including script change, which I thought was brilliant. Having elements of enabling a social contract between the players and the game master, making sure that you have consent, and then using tools like the shorthand symbols for the script change, where it has like the rewind, fast forward, pause aspects where you can speed through certain things that might be an uncomfortable thing, or rewind and go back and re-examine them, or pause or whatever the case may be. When I first started reading about what script change was specifically, and that's the thing I want to spotlight amongst many things. But when I first saw that, there was a part of me that wanted to start rolling my eyes. But then I started reading it. I was like, this is actually perfect. This is brilliant to put in an actual role playing game and say, this is part of the rules. This is part of the way that you play this game because we have evolved as gamers. Like if you still want to do the juvenile power fantasy that Jesse and I enjoyed as teenagers, you can still totally do that in whatever way that you want at your table as long as you everybody agrees to it.
I just got to jump in real quick and say
Sure.
thank you for putting a past tense verb on that. I think you're giving me a lot of credit.
But if you want to play a modern evolution of role playing games that start encompassing so much more conceptually as like what is actually part of a role playing game and how can we use these ideas in the actual play experience, like this is a beautiful example of it. This
I
game is.
really, I just want to dovetail off that really quick. I really appreciated too in that one of the examples is you think of something cooler for your character to have said.
Mhm.
Like you've got a better one line. You're like, hey, can we rewind real
Exactly.
quick? I
Yes.
actually said this.
Yes. Yes.
I think, and that's how you sneak this in with
Yes.
the old folks.
That's a
We're
perfect
going to
way to
use this
put it.
thing so you can retroactively do what you say, and then you introduce the safety elements
Right.
as
Right. So just to then further dovetail on your dovetail, when we played games in the past, you would say that your character does something, and then somebody would be like, "Well, too bad that's what you did." Like it all happens. And then you're like, "Oh, well, that sucks. Okay." And whatever, you get over it. But having this kind of mechanic, which is what Jesse is saying, allows you to make the most out of what a role-playing game actually is. Like movies are static. Movies, unless they incorporate elements of science fiction or different kinds of narrative storytelling that bend the rules as we understand them, they fit into that box. Role-playing games can be so much more, and that's every part of this game is like and it's not screaming it at you. That's the best part about it. Is like at no point in time did I feel like this game was talking down to me. It's just simply offering a different way to play a role-playing game at different stages of like different ways to play as a band and to do the revolution. You can even omit most of the setting if you want to, if you don't want to have those elements in it. And like I think that's a very valuable thing to have in a role-playing game.
yep, agreed.
Okay, so what do you do in a Velvet Generation game?
You rock.
Yeah, you do. And there's so many different ways to do it too, right?
Yeah, so default, one of the things that's really interesting about this game mechanically, and I don't think you can have a discussion of what you do in the game without mechanics, is the game is built around building dice pools that you share into a pool because it's very much a game about a band. And there's some cool relationship mechanics that change what you can do with other people's dice in those pools, but you're building dice pools that people can use for their tests to get success when you're all supporting each other or working together. And for dramatic tension, you can have someone who's a rival where things go the other way. So in this game, you try and grow the fame, the default mode, you try and grow the fame of your underground rock band and eventually have to take on the ministry. And I just want to say this, and I know I said it in episode 1. Uh, the ministry that controls music is called the Ministry of Music. So mom doesn't want you to rock and roll.
Yep.
And God, I love that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's just so good. It's just so good. Okay, sorry. Um, yeah, so you basically your band plays shows and there's a gig mode.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what did you think about the different modes? Because that's a thing you do.
Yeah, I really like the different modes. I like the definitions of, you know, this is how you play this game. This is like the montage. This, you know what I mean? Like these are the different stages of how you play a game, which if you played a role-playing game before, this is just putting a different spin and a different take on like when you focus in and when you pull back out, right? So I really appreciated the definition of that. What I was really impressed by was the way that it makes it all feel like a band, right? Like you have your individual character and your character has individual abilities and you have how you assign the things that you're good at. And then the shared play element of it and how that works. I was like, I don't mean to be disrespectful, to the setting, but I was like, man, this on its own, like I know where Velvet Generation came from. I know it came from an online joke that, listen to the first episode where Rich explains this. But like in my opinion, they didn't even need those setting elements, right? Like if you wanted to play a Scott Pilgrim style role-playing game, this would be perfect for it.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, it like I have been eager to find a non D&D, non like sci-fi, non Starfleet, non whatever wizarding school style role playing game that I could just put in front of a bunch of people who aren't typically into role playing games for just a plug and play night of fun, right? Hey guys, let's play this game. What's the game about? You're all in a band. It's in like a post-apocalyptic future. You're fighting a revolution. You know what I mean? Like the application of that, I think is brilliant. And the modes of play in this game, as you describe them, really do take advantage. Like you can tell that they put so much thought into how this is supposed to work. And it's like I'm normally a person that doesn't like actual plays, but I would love to see an actual play of this, just to see like how this all plays out. What did you think of the modes of play?
I really, really like them. I like that, and this, like I can see the DNA of
Hmm.
well, Blades in the Dark, in this because that whole idea that like there are particular phases in this game. There's the one where you're all doing your own thing, but in this one, because you're a band, your dice pools will feed into each other. There's the ones where you're all doing something together. There's breakdown, montage, the chatty one. Uh, like that's great. But the other thing I liked, and I think this goes back to what you just said, this is also another modern RPG. It has guidance for the different tiers of play. Do you want to do this as a one or two shot? Here's what you do. Do you want to do this as a mini campaign? Here's what you do. Do you want to run this as the full revolution that ends with your like band playing headlining on a massive arena that's been reclaimed from the ministry and you've defeated tyranny and fascism forever? Here's what you do. And like having these different aspects that recognize people's commitment and like their time, I think it's like the perfect answer to that question we had. Like, what is the expectation of campaign length? Like, they give you tools and say very clearly it does not have to be the thing that consumes the next 4 years of your life, but it can be. Here's a system for that.
Right, right.
It's thoughtful, it's incredibly thoughtful of its audience.
Yeah, yeah. It's so nice to have a game that's written with the audience in mind, you know. And I think that we kind of take that for granted in a lot of role-playing games, especially games like Dungeons and Dragons, where it's like it's been such an established standard with its sacred cows, and we just know how D&D works, and they expect that has been refined and simplified over time. Velvet Generation is a dense book. There is so much in it, and it never really feels laborious to read. Like Velvet Generation, we had this conversation kind of off the mics once, where after I read Velvet Generation, I was like, why don't we have gaming books as audiobooks? Because like I could easily see this being a successful audiobook as far if that were ever to be a thing, just simply because of the way it's written.
I that cracks me up because at the very back, I was really delighted when I got to this. Yeah. Page 262. That's a
Mm-hmm.
wrap.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we are done. We know this is a role-playing game rule book, so you probably didn't read it from front to back. But I did.
Can I also say how much I appreciate that the character options also include people that aren't actually like playing an instrument in a band?
And then for when you're doing a gig, there's a section on what they can do to still
Mm-hmm.
be involved.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Like this game could be, very, very just very, very good with, the different kinds of characters you can make is like the diva, the virtuoso, like the
The
synth
synth
wizard.
wizard,
Yeah. Like, and at first you're like, God, this makes so much sense from what we understand of like both modern and classic rock and roll, depending on when classic rock is classic rock for you. But yeah, it's like, and then there's also like, the suit, the person who's like, not really, it's like the manager, they're working the crowds, they're hooking up gigs, you know what I mean? They're spreading the word. And
the
then there's like
roadie,
the roadie.
the
Yep, there's the
muscle,
muscle for
the
sure. Yeah.
criminal,
Yep,
the
the like the
journalist.
firebrand, you know? And it's like if you've ever been to like a low budget show, like these people exist. You know what I mean? Like the Fireside here in Chicago back in the day, right? Like I remember seeing Mastodon before they like really blew up. And like these are like the nostalgic elements that are coming to me as I'm reading this book. Like all these like filthy dirty shows I went to back in the day for bands like you'd never heard of, and you were just lucky if one of them actually ended up being good. And it's like all of these character types and elements just fit so snugly into this. It's like it's so much of it I feel like is written for that experience and it just nails it.
Yep, yep. What was your aha moment? I feel like we've just talked about like 10, but
Yeah, I think we just covered like 10 of them. I think the aha moment was like how you like the band play, right? Where they talk about like having a leader or I'm blanking on the terminology. You give them like a feather boa or a special item and they kick things off in the band and they dictate
yeah.
the pace of how, because like if you're playing a show in the game and you're supposed to, you have to make these elements of the band work together, right? And they mirror the kind of things that we would expect out of musicians. And there's a part of the play loop that involves like recognizing like who that main person is in that moment, and then the play experience transfers that from person to person to give them the spotlight essentially. And
Yep.
like I thought the idea of having like the feathered boa or like the like I envisioned like crazy sunglasses that get passed from person to person when it's their moment to be in the spotlight. I was like, this is perfect. Like the game is and the game is being inclusive. It's making sure everybody gets their moment and has something to contribute, you know.
And that goes back to mine actually, which is the step that gets you there was the band creation rules,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the part about creating your songs, where
Mm-hmm.
you give them like a genre
Yes.
aspect, you give the song a name, which I'm just like that would be really fun to do around the table. It's just like, oh, we need a name for a song. Let's like just think of something. Um, and like and then you pick the different parts of the song and what is the lead and what is the backup.
Mm-hmm.
So then when you actually go to gig, I think the lead picks or everybody rolls and whoever has the highest like set picks who goes first and picks the order. But the backup is there to generate dice that the
Mm-hmm.
lead can use and to try to overcome the crowd's resistance. Like the description of this, I was like, oh, this is great. You wouldn't want to run it the way that you might run like a default D&D combat that's just like you
Right.
hit like you definitely need people
Yes.
describing what's going on. You need the person running the game to be really aware of what can happen at a live show and what could happen in the audience in
Mm-hmm.
order to like make it harder for people to pay attention. The example in the text was there's like a fight that breaks out and the
Mm-hmm.
person who did it like got away isn't in the crowd. So everybody's kind of like, man, is that guy next to me? What's going on? So you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
overcome their attention. Um, and yeah, it's just cool. And then like what you do with success on a song is like you can raise your personal fame or you can
Mm-hmm.
raise the band's fame. And then there's some little like I'm the star like
Right.
story hooks in there. And I was just like, oh man, this is great. This is an RPG about being in a band. That's
Yes.
also got an alien who really likes glam rock
And
and
milkshakes.
is trying to defeat an evil one world government through rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea of a game that's like we are fully leaning into the idea that you are a band. And these are the kind of this is the kind of problematic shit that comes up when you're a band. You know, like the difficulty settings for the mechanics are based on like what order you're going on in the show, like what is your relationship to the headline of the act, like your notoriety, like what stage you are in your fame or process of recognition for the band, and then what other kind of things have happened. And it's like it's this is what I love about role playing games is stuff like this. You know, like D&D gives you that adventure fantasy. You know what I mean? Like Shadowrun gives you this batshit I'm a crazy criminal in a cyberpunk world with trolls and orcs kind of weird,
Or
fantasy.
ironically, if you're playing like first or second edition, you're a rocker or a journalist
Yeah. You
trying to
know,
take down the mega corporation.
but then you have these games. Like what's the game you were telling me about this the lazy town with the like the older woman's book club and then there's a murder and then they
Oh,
have to solve.
Brindlewood Bay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, like this is in that like in that spectrum of like let's just fully get into this idea and then like let's make sure every aspect of this game is hammering home. You are in a band. You are the diva. This is what a diva does. You're going to act like a diva and then you're going to have to deal with like the virtuoso and you're going to have to deal with like all of these other elements and then on top of it is mom, in the rock
Yeah.
revolution. And it's like, you
Mom and the
know,
cops.
yeah, and it's just like this crazy element to it. And it like there were moments when I was reading this book, multiple aha moments, but it was just like I was like, this works so well because like you don't want a role-playing game about bands to be too serious, you
No.
know? Like this is the role-playing game equivalent of like when they do CGI and they purposely make the characters or in a cartoon, they purposely make the characters look a little bit cartoony or just cartoonish enough because they know if that the video game characters look too real, your brain will reject it as you're playing or watching it. The uncanny valley takes over. And so much of Velvet Generation's like setting and the aliens and all of those details is like the creators of this game are like looking at you going like, "Now don't take this too seriously. This is you're supposed to have fun." Like
But also bring down the fascists.
yes. Yes, both of these could be true. Yes. Okay. So who'd you make?
All right. So I basically just went with a terrible pun.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So I wanted to make a criminal
Oh,
who's like
okay.
a shady promoter that, sort of cribbing Han Solo. Like in the sense that like they're going to grow attached to the band and have be conflicted about their loyalties to the criminal organization, not because they're necessarily all in for the revolution, but because they care about these people and the music they make. That
Hmm.
revolution shit will never work. And I decided to name them because of a reference. Dexedrine Witching Hour.
Okay.
And the story behind that is it's Dexy Midnight, like Dexy's
Hmm.
Midnight Runners. And there was a whole thing I saw, I think on a behind the music about how the lead singer was like, we're going to do this fake folk aesthetic. It's going to be a movement. We're going to make this pop song that blah, 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 but they never really had another hit after Come On Eileen, but he was like, it's this whole artificial faux folk thing. Like it was this whole concept piece of pushing this vision, I think, kind of just to make money. And I think
Hmm.
that's the starting point where Dexedrine Witching Hour comes from.
Awesome.
So I'd be
Awesome.
using the I'm going to say it, criminal playbook. Uh,
That's awesome. I have not named my character yet, but I may I my who'd you make for me as a synth wizard? I looked at that character, I was like, how do I not make a synth wizard? And I started thinking of like exactly what I said earlier, where it's like I would love to put this game not just in our regular gaming group, but I would also love to see how this lines up with people who have said to me like, What's this D&D thing all about?" It's like I really want to put this to the test by putting this game in front of them. And so I wanted to do kind of like a Stranger Things style storyline where one of the star children is an important character and the other people they are playing the bandmates, and the synth wizard is an alien who has been kept against their will by like essentially whatever this world's equivalent is of like a famous underground producer who's been using them as their muse in secret in order to produce amazing music. And then this character has gotten free and happened across the player characters. And then, they protect, they invite the alien into their group and it becomes a part of the band. And then that producer character comes looking for them and it starts raising up all the trouble and gets them involved in the revolution because maybe this person is like, they're involved in the revolution, but they're part of the what's the other group? You have the Velvet and the I'm blanking on the name, the
Cobalt,
the
the Cobalt
Cobalt. So
Army.
yeah, they're part of the Cobalt army where it's like they're more extreme than the Velvet. And so
Yeah.
you have a balancing storyline of not just fighting the revolution, but also dealing with this problematic character who's a part of the revolution you know. And so I wanted to do a story like that where it's like the synth wizards using like elements from their ship to create these crazy sounds. And then it's like, okay, now design a band around this person to kind of help give them some guidance to adjust to the system. Like I'm gonna let the player characters do the work, but I'm gonna introduce this idea to them as like as their kind of like lead in into the setting.
Yep. Yeah, I think the way to go, I don't know if this is contrary to the book or not. I can't remember because there's a lot of pages we read very quickly, and we've been reading a lot of RPG books to
We
prepare
have.
for this. But I think the way to go would be like that whole element's there and remake the characters, the
Mm-hmm.
individual characters, but then have them do the band creation.
Definitely. Yes. Yes. I totally agree. All right. So there is one other thing that I do want to talk about with Velvet Generation, which is the dice mechanic system. You would describe this as a one roll system. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so Rain and the One Roll Engine,
Hmm.
Rain in Caridian, Cerberus Society, um, there's a whole bunch. You like the mechanic is, I think, a loving homage to that. And it's can, when trying to explain it, which I will not do here.
Right.
No, I will. I will try to explain it.
Okay. Okay, go for it.
It's a little hard to get if you're used to just rolling one die. So
Yes.
bear with me. Here are the steps. You take basically your attribute plus your ability. So, oh God, we talked about that in the first episode, and I loved how they all tracked. So if you did like perform music, whatever your number is in music and whatever your number is in perform, that's the number of six-sided dice you roll. You get all those dice pool in your hand, you chuck them at the table, you take out any dice that are ones, and then you are looking for matching sets of dice. So this is how this works. There's two features, width and height. Width is the number of dice you have that have the same number. So like if you have four of a kind, That's really good, even if it's four twos. Okay. Height is the number on the dice of the set. So if you have two threes, the height is three, the width is two. If I
This is
roll my big pool of dice and from that dice I pull a set and I have two threes,
mhm,
okay, two fours is better than that
yes.
because it's the same width but a higher height. However, if I have three twos, a lower height than three, but more of them, that beats it. Four of a
Mhm,
kind is better than, two aces.
yeah.
If you think about it like poker, because it's less likely to happen. And when you set the difficulty of a roll, you're going to tell them, all right, well, it's going to be with three, height two. So you need three of a kind or four of a kind, and then at least two on all those dice. And to
Yeah.
make those numbers, that's when you need to start borrowing sets from that group pool, which engages that group mechanic.
Yeah. And the reason why I made Jesse go through this is because you know, I am that kind of person. I am used to more simplified one die roll, the D20 system or whatever, right? Like I come from a almost strictly D&D background. And if I had to offer any criticism towards this game, it's that the dice mechanics like were difficult for me to wrap my head around and get used to. But I will also say I this is a dice mechanic system that as soon as you start seeing it in play, I think it's a learn by doing kind of situation.
Yeah, that was actually one of my major aha moments is that when I had first flipped through this book, I was familiar with the one rule engine. We had talked about the first episode. I thought it was neat, but maybe a little more complicated than it needed to be. But then when I saw how it interacted with the group mechanics for
Mm-hmm.
like a band doing a gig, I was like, I can't think of another way to do this. I
Mm-hmm.
can't think of a way to do this with like just rolling a single d20 or rolling percentile dice. I think
Right.
you need this Yahtzee-esque element to
Right.
the game.
Yeah.
You got to play Yahtzee to rock.
Right. Right. And I would and to piggyback that, what I'm trying to say is that like this is kind of it's a complicated criticism for me to have, right? Because it's coming from my own inexperience with other dice systems and my almost strict adherence to like a very like specific role-playing game experience, right? Um that being said, that's where most people are going to come to or come from, is a Dungeons and Dragons background. Uh, and so like I really appreciate that this is the system they decided to go with because it does work so well. So much of this book I felt so accessible and so easy and so was just so readable. But those are the parts that I got stuck on was dice mechanics, you know. So that's the only pushback that I would give. And like you said, I don't know what I would choose to replace it. I don't think I would. But if you're going to play Velvet Generation, definitely go through that dice system with your player characters first. That's what I would recommend. Make sure that they understand how it works. And like I said before, I think this is a learn by doing system. I think once you see how it goes, it's a lot easier to understand. And that's not a negative criticism on the way that they wrote to explain it, because they definitely give you a lot of examples. This is how this works. Here are some play examples. Here's where this changes. Here's the other rules that impact it. But I will say that's the part of the book that in which I did start to feel a little bit overwhelmed, you know. So that's the only pushback or criticism I would have on this otherwise brilliant, beautiful, accessible, wonderful role-playing game.
Yeah, I would say you might have to do a little bit of effort in order to get it, but from everything else in the book and the way it seems like gameplay is going to go, totally worth that effort.
Right. It's worth the effort. Great way to put
Yes. I rate this game all mantises.
it. Yep, you heard it here. This game gets all mantises from both of us, every single one of them. And Jesse, if our listeners have any questions or feedback or want to communicate with us in any way, shape, or form, how would they do so?
Well, they can be our ninth caller at 1-800-K-ROCK. Or you can email us at jauntymantis@gmail.com. Or you can actually tweet at us
Oh,
at
wow.
wantymantis.com.
We're
I
back.
started posting tweets. I
You
did one.
dog.
I don't know if tweets plural works. I did one.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, email us at jauntymantis@gmail.com, or you can reach us on Twitter at wantymantis.
Yes. And until next time, get out there, get your band together, fight the revolution, and have some fucking fun with Velvet Generation.
Yeah, get out there and fucking rock and roll!